the last 20 years, CA GBC has supported the building sector as it transitions to buildings that are better for people and the planet. To celebrate our 20th anniversary, we are hosting conversations with members who have had an impact on the organization. We are happy to have with us John Hobbs, one of the co-founders of CA GBC and a leading figure in green building in Canada. He joined us for a conversation on the past, the present, and future of CAGBC. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today to reflect on past achievements. So for my first question would be, CAGBC celebrated, as I mentioned, its 20th anniversary, and I understand you were there for the founding. Can you tell me a bit more of what it was like being on the ground floor, what you hope to gain from forming this organization?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I guess 20 years ago, it was very exciting and very inspiring to see so many professionals come together and with a desire to improve things for sustainability and the building sector. The founding really started at the RAIC. I was at the time the executive director, had a committee called the Sustainable Buildings Canada Committee, and everybody was so keen to join, and we had all sorts of members, including many non-architects. And to make a long story short, it really outgrew its mandate. It was well beyond a professional society just for architects. So I think really the leaders, the four founders, thought the best way was to create the Canada Green Building Council and not for profit. And I was there in the early days, really probably more doing administrative support. We ultimately found a space in our headquarters, the RAIC headquarters, to house the CAGBC. We provided sort of finance and accounting support, administrative support, etc. And it very, very quickly grew. And I think within a couple of years, they needed their own space. So I was there on the ground floor helping them get started, essentially.
And how did the idea of a practice supporting organization come about? What did it mean, especially for architects such as yourself?
Well, I think there were many sort of people doing it, doing green building design on their own and maybe looking at support at the US GBC or other organizations. There were no really strong standards or anything at the time. So architects, it just seemed to be a great fit for architects because for the most part, architects are very aware of the environment and the need for creating more sustainable solutions. So one of the early things that was done is we, meaning the founders, and I think this was just before CAGBC was formed, hired Dr. Ray Cole to look at the LEED standard in the US and sort of Canadianize it. And that was done and quickly was adopted initially when the CAGBC was formed.
And, can you maybe share also like some important lesson learned with the CAGBC as a leader, a member, or a collaborator?
Well, I think the most important lesson was to make it a wide tent, a big umbrella, so that everybody in the construction industry, whether it be architects and engineers, but also builders, contractors, suppliers, the whole gamut within the construction industry was involved. And I think that big tent was the reason for its success. Everybody bought into it.
As you mentioned, it's different from traditional professional associations. So TGBC missions can be endorsed by virtually all these professional associations that without any mandate interference. Is this, do you think it's our biggest strength?
Oh, absolutely. I do think it's the biggest strength because professional organizations, they have their own sort of set of guidelines, mandates, ethics, whatever. And they can be narrow and they're geared obviously for that particular profession. So when you look at the design and construction industry, it's really a broad-based part of the economy, a big part of the economy, and you need to have everybody involved.
And so today, CAGBC's member network is 1,000 corporate members strong. How does that compare to what you envisioned?
Well, I was always amazed because the architectural profession is very small in Canada, but I was amazed at how quickly the CAGBC outgrew the size of our membership, and very clearly became enormous. And I'm still amazed. But that having been said, there's many sectors that are still pretty ignorant of green building principles and whatever, particularly the housing sector. And there's a long ways to go, but I'm still amazed at what's taken place in 20 years.
And is our membership an indicator of our industry's growth?
No, I don't think well, it's great to have as many members as possible and make people aware of green building and sustainability within the building industry. But it's hard to say whether it's a narrow group of people. Some people join just for business reasons. And growth in the construction sector, if there was concomitant growth in green buildings, I would say yes, but I don't know that that's the case. I'm not sure that anyone's ever done a study comparing new construction and the percentage that's actually green. So I'm not sure that membership growth is necessarily a measure of good growth.
And what do you think CAGBC should focus on over the next 20 years?
Well, I think the way things are going with respect to standards, that's excellent. Certainly decarbonization, things like that. But advocacy remains a really big component because the public needs to be educated, policymakers need to be educated, all levels of government need to be educated. I just completed a house to passive house standards, and it has a solar electricity with net metering. And a year and a half later, I'm still working, maybe isn't the right word, fighting with the provincial government with respect to net metering. They are not at all ready for this. Not the provincial government, Hydro One in Ontario. They are not ready for this. And I really think, given the need to move away from fossil fuels and the need for growth in electricity and electricity generation, that should be a priority with all electrical utilities across Canada. So that would be something I think to focus on is this net metering, essentially small scale generation, homes, farms, small buildings, and net metering. So that's one thing. There's lots of advocacy. I also mentioned in one of the questions sent to me that my pet peeve is plastic and plastic pollution. Anyone who's traveled widely to remote areas, it's pervasive, the pollution of plastic. It's toxic. Only 9 to 10% is recycled. And the building industry is responsible for some of that. There's all sorts of plastic pails, polyethylene wraps, plastic straps around lumber and other supplies. It's endless, the amount of plastic, the rip-off strips on shingles. So I really think part of the advocacy should be directed at building manufacturers to eliminate plastic packaging. I could go on and on. There's all sorts of things I think we also have to deal with embodied energy and start to probably change the economy and have many things made in Canada, because whether it's a non-fossil fuel transportation or other transportation, it is a big energy source, and we really need to reduce transportation. We're importing building materials, appliances, machinery, everything from all over the world, and Canada is a big enough country to start remanufacturing some of these things.
Well, we're talking about advocacy. You are emphasizing my own my own language, my own field. So thank you. And with this perspective that you gave us, you shared with us, we conclude this interview. Thank you again for for your time today and for sharing your journey with CAGBC as we build our way to a more sustainable future. Thanks again.
Well, thank you very much.
Ensemble, we are building our way forward to a sustainable future.